It is an absolute earthquake in Montecito right now, and the aftershocks are going to be felt for months, if not years to come. Former staff members from the Sussex household have allegedly broken their silence, and the details now circulating among royal watchers and media insiders are nothing short of explosive. We are not talking about vague complaints or anonymous grumbling. We are talking about specific, detailed accounts of life inside that $14 million mansion. And folks, what they are describing paints a picture so different from the carefully curated Sussex brand that it might just shatter it completely. Sources claim that Meghan Markle's reaction upon learning of these leaks has been nothing short of volcanic. One insider describes her as furious and paranoid, desperately trying to identify who is talking and to whom. And honestly, can you blame her for panicking? When you have spent years constructing an image of compassionate humanitarian and devoted wife, the last thing you need is the people who actually witnessed your daily behavior contradicting every word of it. The walls that were supposed to protect their privacy are now covered in cracks, and through those cracks the truth is allegedly pouring out. Let that sink in for a moment. This is the couple who left the royal family claiming they needed privacy, who demanded the world respect their boundaries, who built their entire brand on being the authentic, relatable alternative to the stuffy palace they abandoned. Now, the very people they hired to maintain their private sanctuary are reportedly spilling secrets that contradict everything the Sussexes have sold to the public. The irony is absolutely staggering. The nature of these alleged leaks is comprehensive and devastating. We are talking about details regarding daily life inside the mansion, the true dynamics of Harry and Meghan's marriage, and behavior behind closed doors that sources say completely contradicts the public image. One person familiar with the situation put it bluntly, saying that what happens on camera and what happens when the cameras stop rolling are two entirely different realities, and they are apparently ready to prove it. Royal commentators are already comparing this to the most damaging insider accounts in recent memory. Some are saying this could be worse than anything that came out of the palace itself, worse than the briefings, worse than the anonymous sources that the Sussexes themselves complained about so bitterly. The difference now is that these are people who were in the room. These are people who served the food, cleaned the house, managed the calendar, and witnessed everything. If even a fraction of what they are allegedly sharing is accurate, the Sussex brand might never recover. But the question everyone is asking is, how did we get here? And why are staff members suddenly willing to risk legal consequences to share what they know? The $14 million Montecito estate was supposed to be their fortress, their sanctuary, their fresh start away from the prying eyes of the British press. When Harry and Meghan purchased this sprawling property with its 16 bathrooms, its pristine grounds, and its celebrity neighbors, the message was clear. They were building a new life on their own terms, protected by California privacy laws and surrounded by security that would make even the most determined paparazzi think twice. Instead, that fortress has sprung more leaks than a rusty submarine, and the water is rising fast. The staff turnover at the Sussex household has been nothing short of extraordinary. Reports indicate that dozens of employees have cycled through the mansion in just a few short years, creating a trail of potential witnesses that stretches across the entire Southern California service industry. From nannies to security personnel, from housekeepers to personal assistants, the revolving door has been spinning so fast it is a miracle it has not flown off its hinges. And every single person who walked through that door and then walked back out carries memories, observations, and potentially damaging information. For those unfamiliar with how non-disclosure agreements work in situations like this, allow me to explain. NDAs are only as powerful as the ability to enforce them, and enforcement becomes complicated when agreements expire, when staff members move to different states, or when the potential payout from media outlets exceeds the potential legal consequences. Sources suggest that some former employees have reached the end of their contractual obligations. Others are allegedly frustrated enough that they no longer care about the risks. And let us be brutally honest here. When major media outlets are willing to pay significant sums for first-hand accounts, the mathematics of silence start to change dramatically. One insider revealed that the atmosphere inside that mansion was so intense that many staff members started keeping detailed notes, not because they planned to sell stories, but because they wanted to protect themselves in case of disputes. Those notes, it seems, are now proving useful for entirely different purposes. Another source described feeling emboldened by watching the Sussexes publicly criticize their former royal staff while apparently treating their own employees no better. The hypocrisy, they claim, became too much to stomach in silence. What these alleged leaks are painting is a portrait that contradicts the fairy tale California life the Sussexes have marketed so aggressively. The image of the down-to-earth couple raising chickens, hugging each other at charity events, and building a media empire based on authenticity is reportedly crumbling under the weight of first-hand accounts. Sources describe a household marked by tension, demands, and an atmosphere that one former employee allegedly characterized as walking through a minefield every single day. But the first specific revelation from these alleged leaks is enough to make even Harry question everything he thought he knew about the woman he married. Staff members have allegedly started describing something they call the Two Meghans Phenomenon, and folks, if these accounts are accurate, it is as jarring as anything you will hear today. According to multiple sources, there is Camera Meghan, the warm, empathetic, relatable woman who speaks passionately about kindness and compassion, and then there is Private Meghan, the one the staff allegedly encountered behind closed doors. And those two people, according to these accounts, might as well be strangers. The specific claims are detailed and damning. Sources allege that Meghan has extraordinarily particular requirements about her environment. We are talking about specific temperature settings that must be maintained at all times, elaborate food restrictions that allegedly change frequently enough to keep kitchen staff in constant confusion, and expectations about how her personal spaces should be arranged down to the millimeter. One former employee allegedly stated that nothing was ever quite right, that even when instructions were followed perfectly, there was always something to criticize. But the temperature of the rooms and the arrangement of the throw pillows is not what has people talking. It is the alleged screaming fits over what staff describe as minor issues. One source claims to have witnessed Meghan completely lose composure over a scheduling miscommunication that lasted less than 10 minutes to resolve. Another allegedly described watching her berate a young assistant until the employee was in tears, only to turn around moments later and record a video message about the importance of treating people with dignity. Let that sink in for a moment. The contrast with her public image could not be more stark. This is a woman who has built her brand on compassion, on empathy, on being a voice for the voiceless. She has given speeches about kindness at the United Nations. She has written about treating service workers with respect. She has positioned herself as the enlightened alternative to a cold, uncaring royal institution. And yet, according to these alleged accounts, her treatment of her own employees tells a very different story. One particularly biting quote has been circulating among royal watchers. A former staff member allegedly stated that she treats employees like they are invisible until something goes wrong, and then suddenly you are the most visible person in the room, and not in a good way. Another allegedly described the experience as feeling like you could never do anything right, like perfection was expected but never defined, so failure was inevitable. Allow me to translate that for you. It means working in a constant state of anxiety where the goalposts move daily, and criticism is the only consistent feedback. The cognitive dissonance required to publicly champion humanitarian causes while allegedly mistreating the very people who make your privileged life possible is extraordinary. But according to staff whispers, Meghan is not the only Sussex whose behavior raises serious questions. What they allegedly say about Harry paints an even more troubling picture. Insiders are now claiming that Prince Harry, the once gregarious prince known for his warmth, his humor, and his genuine connection with people, has become increasingly isolated within his own home. And the alleged reason for that isolation has staff members genuinely worried. According to multiple sources, Meghan has allegedly taken control of Harry's communications to a degree that those familiar with the situation describe as concerning. The specific claims are startling. Former staff allegedly report that Harry rarely makes independent phone calls to his family in the United Kingdom without Meghan present in the room. One source described watching Harry attempt to call his brother, only to have Meghan interject herself into the conversation within minutes. Another allegedly stated that Harry's personal phone seemed to be monitored, with Meghan apparently aware of who was calling and what was being discussed even when she was not physically present. Word on the street is that Harry's few remaining friends from his former life have expressed frustration about their inability to reach him directly. The change in Harry's demeanor has allegedly been dramatic enough that staff members have taken notice. Sources describe a man who arrived in California in 2020 looking excited, optimistic, and ready for his new adventure. That man, they claim, has been replaced by someone who seems lost, withdrawn, and uncertain of his own position within his household. One particularly heartbreaking account allegedly describes Harry wandering the grounds of the estate alone, looking what one staff member characterized as profoundly sad. Let us be brutally honest here. This is a man who sacrificed everything: his family, his country, his military career, his lifelong friends, his constitutional role, everything, for this new life. And if these accounts are accurate, what he received in return is isolation, control, and a slowly diminishing sense of self. The tragedy of that trade-off is almost too painful to contemplate. Reports suggest that Harry's few remaining connections to his former life have become increasingly strained. Friends who once spoke to him regularly, allegedly now go months without contact. One person familiar with the situation claimed that when Harry does manage to connect with old friends, he sounds different, guarded, like he is choosing his words carefully because someone might be listening. Another allegedly stated that Harry seems to have lost his spark, that the playful, mischievous prince who charmed the world has been replaced by someone going through the motions. The question that keeps coming up among those who claim to have witnessed this transformation is simple but devastating. Does Harry know what he has lost? Does he understand the full extent of his isolation? Or has the process been so gradual that he does not even recognize how much he has changed? Those close to the couple say the answers might not matter anymore, because the Harry they once knew seems to have disappeared entirely. But it is what allegedly happens during their business meetings that has staff truly alarmed, and the revelations about Archewell paint a picture of an organization in complete disarray. Staff leaks are allegedly revealing chaos behind the scenes at Archewell, and folks, what they are describing makes the public failures of this foundation look like minor hiccups. According to sources, Meghan has reportedly positioned herself as the micromanager-in-chief, controlling every detail of every project while somehow managing to ensure that almost nothing actually gets accomplished. It is a special kind of dysfunction that combines total control with complete inertia, and the people tasked with making this organization function are allegedly at their wits' end. The claims about endless rebranding meetings are particularly damning. Sources describe sessions that go on for hours, sometimes spanning multiple days, in which every aspect of Archewell's presentation is dissected, debated, and ultimately changed, only to be changed again the following week. One alleged insider described it as being trapped in a loop where progress is impossible because the destination keeps moving. Another stated that they lost count of how many times the website was redesigned, how many logos were scrapped, how many mission statements were rewritten, all while actual charitable work ground to a halt. For those unfamiliar with Archewell's recent fiscal sponsorship situation, allow me to explain why it matters. The foundation recently made changes to its operational structure that raised eyebrows among non-profit experts. While the Sussexes have framed these changes as strategic pivots, critics argue they reflect fundamental problems with how the organization was being managed. And now, with staff allegedly confirming internal dysfunction, that criticism looks increasingly accurate. One insider quote has been making the rounds that perfectly captures the alleged chaos. "There is no clear vision," they reportedly stated. "It is just whatever gets them attention that week. We would spend months developing a project, get it nearly ready to launch, and then suddenly the priorities would shift entirely because something else seemed more appealing. The waste of time, money, and human energy was staggering, and they are absolutely right. An organization cannot function when its leadership is chasing headlines rather than executing a coherent plan." The burnout among Archewell staff has allegedly been severe. Sources describe employees working around the clock to meet constantly shifting deadlines, only to watch their work discarded when new priorities emerged. One former employee allegedly stated that they had never experienced such a demoralizing work environment, where effort was demanded but never rewarded, and where failure was blamed on staff while success was attributed entirely to Meghan and Harry. The pattern, they claim, was consistent and crushing. But the financial pressures allegedly facing Archewell are nothing compared to what sources say happened behind the scenes with their Hollywood deals, and those revelations explain why the Sussex entertainment empire has collapsed so spectacularly. Leaked details are allegedly explaining what really happened with the Spotify deal, and folks, the official narrative about creative differences does not even begin to cover it. According to sources who claim to have witnessed the negotiations, the collapse was not just about content. It was about behavior, expectations, and a fundamental inability to function as collaborative partners. And if these accounts are accurate, the Sussexes have no one to blame but themselves. Staff reportedly witnessed heated calls with Spotify executives that left everyone in the room uncomfortable. Sources claim that Meghan refused to accept editorial notes, insisted on complete creative control despite having no podcasting experience, and treated feedback as personal attacks rather than professional guidance. One alleged insider described watching Meghan on a call with network representatives saying she was dismissive, condescending, and absolutely unwilling to consider that she might not be the expert in the room. Another reportedly stated that it was painful to watch because you could see the deal dying in real time. The allegations about rejected projects are particularly telling. According to sources, the Polo documentary that ultimately emerged was apparently a last resort after multiple other pitches were turned down by Netflix executives. The Sussexes allegedly proposed numerous projects that networks deemed unworkable, either because the concepts were underdeveloped, the budgets were unrealistic, or because Harry and Meghan's demands made collaboration impossible. One insider allegedly put it bluntly, saying they wanted control without accountability, credit without effort, and prestige without the work that earns it. The tension between Harry and Meghan over these failures has allegedly become a significant source of conflict. Sources claim that disagreements about whose fault the deal collapses have led to heated arguments behind closed doors. Meghan allegedly blames Harry's lack of star power and media training. Harry allegedly feels Meghan's refusal to accept guidance has sabotaged opportunities. One person familiar with the situation described watching them argue about a failed pitch, saying it was like watching two people realize simultaneously that their business partnership was a disaster, but neither willing to admit their own contribution to that disaster. Reports suggest that the financial implications of these failures are substantial. The Sussexes reportedly signed deals worth tens of millions of dollars, money that was contingent on delivering content that actually performed. With Spotify terminated and Netflix reportedly dissatisfied, the income stream they planned to build their California empire upon has allegedly slowed to a trickle. And that financial pressure, according to sources, is creating tensions that extend far beyond the conference room. Yet it is the secrets about their actual marriage that tabloids would allegedly pay millions to confirm. and what staff members are describing raises questions about the very foundation of the Sussex partnership. Staff allegedly report that the Sussex marriage is showing signs of significant strain, and the specific details they are sharing paint a picture of two people growing apart while maintaining a united front for the cameras. According to sources, separate schedules have become the norm rather than the exception. Meghan allegedly spends much of her time in Los Angeles for meetings and events, while Harry remains at the Montecito estate, increasingly alone with his thoughts and diminishing circle of contacts. The claim about separate bedrooms on certain nights has been circulating among royal watchers, with staff allegedly confirming that it is not just an occasional occurrence. Sources describe periods where Harry and Meghan allegedly operate like roommates rather than romantic partners, passing each other in hallways, exchanging brief words, but lacking the warmth and connection that once seemed to define their relationship. One former employee allegedly stated that you could feel the temperature drop when they were in the same room, that the tension was palpable even when they were not actively arguing. Disagreements about the children have allegedly become a major source of conflict. Sources claim that Harry and Meghan have very different views about how Archie and Lilibet should be raised, particularly regarding their public exposure. Meghan allegedly favors more visibility for the children, viewing them as assets in maintaining relevance and attracting opportunities. Harry reportedly pushes back, wanting to protect them from the media attention that he believes damaged his own childhood. One insider described witnessing an argument about whether to include the children in a project, saying it was one of the most intense disagreements they had ever seen between any couple. Perhaps most poignantly, sources claim that Harry misses home more than he admits publicly. Reports suggest he has expressed private longing for England, for his old friends, for the military connections he treasures. Even for family members he has publicly criticized. One alleged insider stated that Harry sometimes watches coverage of royal events with an expression that can only be described as grief. Another reportedly claimed that he has brought up the possibility of spending more time in the United Kingdom, suggestions that Meghan allegedly dismisses immediately. Let that sink in for a moment. A man who gave up everything, who burned bridges with his father, brother, and grandmother's memory, who denounced his own country on international television, allegedly now looks back at what he left behind and wonders if he made the right choice. The tragedy of that realization, if accurate, is profound. Insiders have supposedly observed Meghan dismissing Harry's opinions in front of staff, undermining his authority and contradicting his statements. One source described it as watching someone being systematically diminished, their confidence eroded through 1,000 small cuts. The prince, who once commanded attention in any room he entered, has allegedly become a supporting character in his own life. But the most explosive leaks allegedly involve what visitors to the mansion have witnessed firsthand, and these accounts corroborate the troubling picture emerging from staff testimonies. It is not just former employees who are allegedly sharing concerns about what happens inside the Sussex household. Guests, contractors, and business visitors have reportedly corroborated the troubling accounts, creating a pattern of testimony that becomes increasingly difficult to dismiss as disgruntled exaggeration. When multiple independent sources describe similar experiences, the portrait that emerges carries a weight that individual complaints simply cannot match. One particularly detailed account allegedly comes from a contractor who worked on renovations at the estate. According to this source, the experience of working in the Sussex home was defined by walking on eggshells, never knowing which version of the household dynamics you would encounter on any given day. The contractor allegedly described Meghan as unpredictable, warm and gracious one moment, cold and critical the next, with no apparent trigger for the shifts. They reportedly stated that their crew developed a system of hand signals to warn each other when her mood seemed to change, because being caught off guard by her displeasure was professionally devastating. The claims about Meghan's behavior towards service workers directly contradict her carefully cultivated image as an advocate for equality and respect. Sources describe alleged interactions with delivery personnel, maintenance workers, and service providers that range from dismissive to outright hostile. One alleged account involves Meghan berating a catering employee over a perceived slight during an event, behavior that witnesses reportedly found shocking given her public statements about treating all people with dignity. Allow me to translate what this means. It means the feminist icon who speaks about empowerment allegedly treats working-class service providers as beneath her notice. Perhaps most damaging are the claims that some A-list visitors have allegedly declined return invitations after their first experience at the Montecito mansion. According to sources, certain high-profile guests were reportedly uncomfortable with the atmosphere, the dynamics between Harry and Meghan, or the way staff members were treated in their presence. One insider allegedly stated that word has spread in certain Hollywood circles that dinner at the Sussexes is an evening to avoid, that the energy is off, and that the experience is more stressful than enjoyable. Reports suggest that the Sussexes' social circle has contracted significantly since their arrival in California. The celebrity friendships they once touted have allegedly cooled, with former close contacts now keeping polite distance. Some observers attribute this to the negative attention surrounding the couple. Others suggest the visitor testimonies might explain why famous friends have quietly stepped back, When your own guests report discomfort, invitations become harder to extend and easier to decline. Now, Meghan is allegedly in full damage control mode, but her response to these leaks might backfire more spectacularly than the leaks themselves. Sources claim that Meghan's team is scrambling to identify who is talking and to whom, with threats of legal action reportedly being prepared against anyone suspected of violating confidentiality agreements. The war room mentality has allegedly taken over, with every former employee becoming a suspect and every rumor being traced back to potential sources. But here is the problem. When you have cycled through dozens of staff members over several years, the pool of potential witnesses is so large that plugging the leaks becomes virtually impossible. The legal challenges facing any enforcement effort are substantial. Former staff members are scattered across multiple states, each with different laws regarding non-disclosure agreements and their enforceability. Some agreements may have expired, others may contain provisions that courts have deemed unenforceable. And perhaps most importantly, pursuing aggressive legal action against former employees risks generating exactly the kind of headlines the Sussexes desperately want to avoid. One legal expert allegedly stated that suing former staff members is a losing proposition because even if you win, you lose in the court of public opinion. The Streisand effect looms large over any attempt to suppress these stories. For those unfamiliar with the term, it refers to the phenomenon where attempts to hide or censor information backfire by drawing more attention to it than would have occurred if nothing had been done. If Meghan's team pursues visible legal action against former employees, they risk elevating what might have remained gossip into headline news. Every lawsuit becomes a press release announcing that there are secrets worth protecting. Reports suggest that Meghan's public relations team is already pivoting to a familiar strategy, positioning her as the victim of yet another coordinated attack. Sources claim the narrative being prepared frames these leaks as part of an ongoing campaign to destroy her, orchestrated by enemies in the British establishment or racist elements in American media. One insider allegedly stated that the victim card is the only play left because defending the actual behavior is impossible. But if that strategy sounds familiar, it is because the public has heard it before. After the bullying allegations from palace staff, after the Oprah interview, after the Netflix documentary, after the memoir, Meghan has consistently positioned herself as the target rather than the source of conflict. Each time public sympathy has diminished, each time the audience for the persecution narrative has shrunk, and this time, with former employees providing specific, detailed accounts, the victim framework might finally collapse entirely under the weight of accumulated testimony. The question now is what happens to the entire Sussex empire if the full truth about their California experiment finally emerges. The alleged picture now emerging from these staff leaks is devastating in its comprehensiveness. We are looking at accounts of a household in chaos, a marriage showing visible strain, professional relationships burned and abandoned, and a carefully constructed public image that bears no resemblance to what those closest to the couple actually witnessed. Every pillar of the Sussex brand, authenticity, compassion, partnership, purpose, is allegedly being undermined by the very people who watched the brand being built from the inside. The speculation about whether more staff will come forward seems almost academic at this point. Once the dam breaks, water flows freely. Sources suggest that former employees who previously hesitated to speak are now watching this coverage and reconsidering their silence. One insider allegedly stated that there is a tipping point where staying quiet feels like complicity, where you have to ask yourself why you are protecting people who treated you so poorly. That tipping point, it appears, may have arrived. Historical parallels are instructive here. Time and again, powerful figures have been brought down not by investigative journalists or political opponents, but by the testimony of those who worked closest to them. Staff members see everything. They witness the private moments that public relations cannot control. They observe the contradictions between stated values and actual behavior. And when enough of them start talking, the cumulative effect is impossible to counteract with spin. The question that viewers should be asking is straightforward but profound. If even half of these staff allegations are accurate, how long can the Sussex brand survive? They built their entire post-royal identity on being different, better, more authentic than the institution they left behind. But if the accounts now emerging are credible, they are not different at all. They are simply the same dysfunction in a different location, with better weather and worse accountability. And what about Harry? Does he know the full extent of what former staff members are saying about his wife, about their marriage, about the household he thought he was building? Has anyone been honest with him about how dramatically his image has shifted among people who once adored him? Or is he as isolated from uncomfortable truths as he allegedly is from former friends and family? The coming months will be defining for whatever remains of the Sussex enterprise. Legal threats may silence some voices but amplify others. Media coverage will intensify rather than diminish. And the public, which once viewed Harry and Meghan with sympathy and hope, will continue to receive information that challenges everything the couple has claimed about themselves. This is the reality of the post-royal Sussex experiment in 2025. The fortress they built has been breached from within. The staff they hired to maintain their privacy are allegedly sharing everything they witnessed. And the truth, whatever it ultimately proves to be, is working its way inevitably toward the light. Drop your thoughts below. Like, subscribe, and stay tuned. The next video is waiting, and you will not believe what is coming next.